There's a reason some riders stay confident in winter, and it's not toughness. Cold weather doesn't punish everyone equally. Some motorcycles stay composed on frost, slush, and broken pavement, while others magnify every mistake. Today, we're talking about the machines that stop winter from becoming a fight because they stay planted, predictable, and calm. Number 10. Suzuki V-Strom 650. Cold weather has a way of stripping away ego and exposing what actually works when pavement turns hostile. This entry earns its place not through flash or bravado, but by surviving the kind of riding seasons most motorcycles quietly avoid. When frost heaves, salt lines, and half-repaired roads become the daily reality. Calm behavior matters more than attitude. Riders who have logged decades on touring rigs understand that winter punishes drama and rewards restraint. The 650 carries itself with an even temperament that feels familiar to anyone who values stability over excitement. Power arrives smoothly, without sudden surges that upset traction when the road surface cannot be trusted. Steering stays neutral, even when the front tire crosses cold tar snakes or shallow slush patches. That predictability reduces mental fatigue, which becomes just as important as physical comfort once daylight shortens and temperatures fall. Wind protection is modest, but honest. Airflow is managed well enough to reduce constant pressure on the chest without creating turbulent pockets that drain heat faster. The riding position keeps weight centered and relaxed, allowing small corrections without wrestling the bars. Long rides in cold conditions demand exactly this kind of cooperation between machine and rider. Nothing here tries to impress. Everything simply works. Ownership history matters to experienced riders, especially those who have maintained their own machines for decades. This design has proven tolerant of neglect, bad fuel, and imperfect maintenance schedules. Parts availability remains strong, and repairs do not require specialized tools or dealership dependence. That matters when winter miles pile up quietly and reliability stops being theoretical. In winter, that quiet dependability often means finishing the ride relaxed, upright, and confident, instead of exhausted, tense, and questioning decisions later. Produces 70 horsepower from a 645 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 46 pound-feet torque, uses. Braking weighs 470 pounds wet, 32.9 inches, priced $9,000. If the V-Strom wins with calm predictability, this one wins by carrying its mass lower, making slick pavement feel less dramatic. Number 9. Honda NC 750X. Cold mornings have a way of humbling riders who once believed horsepower solved everything. When traction fades and traffic stiffens, composure becomes currency, and this entry earns respect by staying unbothered. It does not chase attention or nostalgia. It simply behaves mile after mile when winter strips riding down to fundamentals and patience. What separates it from louder machines is balance. The engine sits low, carrying mass near the ground, which settles the chassis on slick pavement and broken seams. Throttle response stays measured, allowing steady roll-on without upsetting grip. The riding position keeps knees relaxed and shoulders neutral, reducing fatigue when cold tightens muscles. That calm posture matters when visibility drops and reaction time shrinks. Storage practicality quietly changes winter habits. Built-in space encourages carrying liners, gloves, and tools without hanging weight high or wide. Maintenance access is straightforward, a trait appreciated by riders who still turn their own wrenches. Fuel economy stretches range during cold starts and short hops, when consumption usually climbs. Reliability here is not a talking point. It is assumed, proven across seasons and commutes. Wind management remains honest rather than theatrical. Air flows cleanly, avoiding turbulence that saps warmth. Braking feel stays progressive, letting the rider trail pressure with confidence when surfaces shine unexpectedly. The overall experience rewards restraint, planning, and smooth inputs. values long respected by riders who learned their craft before electronics promised miracles. Winter riding favors routines learned over decades, like scanning pavement texture, listening for tire feedback, and leaving space for mistakes. This machine complements those habits instead of fighting them. It encourages measured decisions, steady braking, and patient throttle, aligning with riders who value arriving intact over proving anything during cold stretches when judgment matters most. Produces 58 horsepower. From a 745 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 51 pound-feet. Torque uses, braking weighs 493 pounds, wet 31.6 inches, 9,000. Balance helps, but what about the hits frost heaves, potholes, broken seams? Which bikes stay composed when the road gets violent? Before we go further, if this breakdown is sharpening how you think about winter riding, hit like, subscribe for Rider First analysis, and share your perspective below. Real experience matters here, and your insight helps keep this channel grounded in truth. Number 8. Yamaha Super Tenere. Some motorcycles feel heavy the moment winter arrives, while others use their mass to calm everything around them. This entry belongs to the second group. When temperatures drop and wind stiffens the air, stability becomes more valuable than agility. Riders with long miles behind them recognize that certain machines stop reacting to winter and start absorbing it instead. That quiet confidence is what places this one here. The Super Tenere carries weight low and spreads it evenly, which changes how cold roads feel through the bars. Crosswinds lose their authority, grooved. Pavement stops tugging at the front end. The chassis tracks straight when patches of frost appear without warning. That sense of being planted reduces mental strain, especially during long winter days when focus fades faster than fuel. Comfort matters more in the cold, and this machine approaches it with restraint. Wind protection shields the torso without creating turbulence that drains warmth. The seat supports hours of riding without pressure, points that stiffen joints, already fighting temperature. Heated gear integration is straightforward, and electrical capacity supports it without complaint. These details matter to riders who still put real miles on the clock after the novelty wears off. Reliability also plays a role. Shaft drive eliminates one more winter maintenance concern. The engine tolerates cold, starts without protest, settling into a steady rhythm quickly. Service intervals are generous, and mechanical access respects owners who still believe in doing their own work. Nothing about this machine demands attention, which is exactly why it earns trust. Winter riding is about conserving energy, both physical and mental. When a motorcycle reduces constant corrections, the rider arrives sharper and less fatigued. This one does that by refusing to amplify bad conditions. It stays composed when roads crumble, when traffic tightens, and when daylight disappears earlier each week. Riders who value endurance over excitement understand why that matters. Produces 110 horsepower from a 1199 cubic centimeter engine. Delivers 84 pound-feet torque, uses braking weighs 584 pounds, wet 16,000. At this point, the list turns toward machines that rely less on mass and more on leverage. Number 7. Harley-Davidson Pan America, 1250. For decades, winter riding forced American touring loyalists to choose between brand pride and cold weather control. That compromise ended when this machine arrived. It did not ask riders to abandon heritage, sound, or torque expectations. Instead, it addressed the reality that cold roads punish weight bias, limited suspension, and low ground clearance faster than any marketing claim ever could. The Pan America feels unfamiliar at first, especially to riders raised on floorboards and long wheelbases. The bars sit higher, the stance feels taller, and leverage replaces brute mass. In winter, that leverage becomes an advantage. Frost heaves, potholes, and uneven repairs stop throwing the front end offline. The chassis stays composed when surfaces change without warning, which is exactly when older riders value predictability most. Power delivery matters in cold conditions, and this engine does not surge or hesitate when traction fades. Torque arrives early and stays linear, making throttle control easier when gloves dull sensation. The riding position keeps weight centered and knees relaxed, reducing fatigue during long winter stretches when muscles tighten and reaction time slows. This machine rewards smooth inputs, not aggression. Wind management remains honest. Air is directed upward without creating turbulent pockets that drain heat. Heated gear integration feels intentional, not improvised. And electrical capacity supports it without strain. The adaptive ride height system lowers the bike at stops, restoring confidence for riders managing balance on slick pavement without sacrificing clearance once rolling again. This design also marks a philosophical shift. It proves American manufacturers recognize that year-round, riders exist outside fair weather traditions. Instead of asking riders to tough it out, this machine meets winter on equal footing. It does not replace touring icons, but it expands what riding seasons can look like without surrendering identity. Produces 150 horsepower from a 1,252 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 94 pound-feet torques. Uses braking weighs 534 pounds wet, 17,000. So yeah, power's nice. But from here, the bikes that rank higher are the ones that make control feel automatic. Number 6. Kawasaki Versys 1000. Cold weather riding has a way of punishing motorcycles that were built only for perfect pavement and summer weekends. This entry earns its place by refusing to be rattled when winter breaks the road apart. It was shaped around stability first, speed second. And that decision shows itself clearly once temperatures drop and surfaces stop behaving the way riders expect. The Versys carries its weight in a way that feels planted rather than bulky. Steering stays neutral even when the front tire crosses cracked asphalt, patched seams, or frozen shadows that linger well into the afternoon. Suspension travel is tuned for control instead of drama, absorbing sharp hits without pitching the chassis forward. That keeps braking predictable, which matters when cold tires shorten the margin for error. Power delivery stays composed and deliberate. Throttle response avoids abrupt surges that can upset traction when gloves reduce feel and cold stiffens wrists. The riding position keeps the spine upright and the knees relaxed, allowing riders to stay loose instead of bracing against the bars. Over long winter rides, that posture reduces fatigue and preserves focus when daylight fades early and traffic tightens. Wind protection plays a quiet but important role. Airflow is managed cleanly, shielding the chest without creating turbulence that pulls heat away from the shoulders. The fairing and screen work together instead of fighting each other, making heated gear more effective and reducing the constant strain of pushing against cold air. Electrical capacity supports winter accessories without complaint, a detail riders appreciate once they have lived through improvised solutions. This machine also appeals to riders who value function over image. It does not chase nostalgia or fashion. It exists to cover distance in imperfect conditions with minimal fuss. That practicality resonates with riders who measure a good winter ride by how calm they feel when they roll back into the garage. Produces 120 horsepower from a 1,043 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 75 pound-feet. Torque uses, braking weighs 560 pounds, wet, 33.1 inches, 18,000. See, some bikes are couches for cold air, others are tools for messy roads, built to move through disorder. Number 5. Honda Africa Twin. There are motorcycles built for comfort, and there are motorcycles built for uncertainty. This one belongs firmly in the second category. When winter roads stop offering clear signals and conditions change without warning, confidence no longer comes from tradition or sound. It comes from a machine that expects chaos and stays composed inside it. That mindset defines why this entry belongs here. The Africa Twin feels tall at first, especially to riders used to low seats and long wheelbases. That height, however, creates visibility and leverage when traffic tightens and surfaces break apart. Suspension travel absorbs frost damage, potholes, and uneven repairs before they reach the rider's spine. Instead of bracing for every hit, the body stays relaxed, which preserves energy over long, cold rides. Throttle control remains deliberate and forgiving. Power builds smoothly, allowing careful roll on when grip becomes questionable. That behavior matters when gloves dull feel and cold slows reaction time. Steering inputs stay light, and the chassis responds without hesitation, encouraging subtle corrections instead of abrupt reactions. Winter rewards restraint, and this machine was designed around that principle. Wind protection is functional rather than luxurious. Air is managed well enough to reduce fatigue without isolating the rider completely from conditions. That balance keeps awareness sharp while preventing constant pressure against the chest. Heated gear integration works cleanly, supported by electrical capacity intended for long-distance use. Riders who extend their season understand how valuable that becomes once temperatures settle in. Reliability also plays a role. This platform has earned trust among riders who cross remote regions where help is not guaranteed. Cold starts remain predictable, and maintenance intervals respect owners who still perform their own service. Nothing here feels delicate or overcomplicated, which aligns with riders who prefer tools that work quietly in the background. Winter riding is not about dominance, it is about adaptability. This machine adapts without argument, absorbing uncertainty and returning control to the rider when it matters most. Produces 100 horsepower from a 1,084 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 77 pound-feet, torque uses braking ways. 511 pounds, wet, 34.3 inches, $14,000. But this next one is less about being cushy and more about getting honest feedback, because winter punishes surprises. As we wrap this section up, subscribe and like if you value clear, experience-driven breakdowns like this. Comment down below, because every video builds on our community's hard-earned riding knowledge, helping you make smarter choices, ride longer seasons, and avoid mistakes riders learn too late. Number 4. Yamaha Tenere 700. Some motorcycles earn trust, not by sheltering the rider from winter, but by telling the truth about it early enough to react. This entry sits high on the list because it communicates clearly when conditions start to turn. For riders who learned their craft long before traction control existed, that honesty matters more than comfort alone. The Tenere 700 feels lighter than most machines here, and that difference shows up the moment pavement quality drops. Steering remains direct, and feedback travels cleanly through the bars instead of being filtered away. When the front tire crosses cold tar, loose gravel, or early morning frost, the rider feels it immediately. That warning allows small corrections instead of large saves, which becomes critical once reaction time slows in colder weather. Suspension travel plays a major role. Instead of deflecting off sharp edges and broken seams, the bike absorbs them and stays composed. That reduces the constant tension that drains energy during winter riding. The riding position encourages standing or shifting weight easily, giving leverage when surfaces become unpredictable. This machine does not fight input, it responds to it. Wind protection is minimal compared to touring machines, but the airflow stays clean. There is less turbulence pulling heat away, even if exposure remains. Riders who layer properly often find this simpler setup easier to manage than complex. Fairings that create cold pockets. The narrow profile also reduces crosswind push, keeping the bike tracking straight when gusts hit unexpectedly. Reliability and simplicity define its character. There are fewer systems competing for attention, and maintenance access remains straightforward. Riders who value mechanical clarity appreciate that nothing here feels hidden or fragile. cold starts remain consistent, and the engine settles quickly into a steady rhythm that inspires confidence on early departures. Winter riding favors awareness over isolation. This machine keeps the rider engaged without demanding constant correction. It rewards smooth hands, measured throttle, and eyes that read the road ahead. That partnership explains why experienced riders often trust lighter, more communicative designs when conditions deteriorate. Produces 74 horsepower from a 689 cubic centimeter engine, delivers 51 pound-feet, torque uses braking ways 452, pounds wet, 34.4 inches, 10,000. This is where the rough edges get sanded down, but the grip on reality stays intact. Number 3. BMW R 1250 GS. Long before winter, riding became a talking point online. Certain machines earned their reputations by surviving it quietly. This entry sits here because it was shaped by decades of riders who refused to park their motorcycles when seasons changed. It was not built to impress crowds. It was built to stay predictable when roads stopped cooperating. The GS carries its mass differently than most large motorcycles. Weight sits low and wide, which calms the chassis the moment traction becomes uncertain. When the front tire crosses cold seams or broken pavement, the bike settles instead of reacting. That behavior reduces the chain of corrections that exhaust riders during long winter days. Stability here feels natural, not forced. Torque delivery plays a central role. Power arrives early and evenly, allowing smooth roll-on without upsetting grip. That matters when gloves dull sensation and cold stiffens wrists. The upright riding position keeps the spine neutral and the rider alert, reducing fatigue that creeps in faster during short daylight hours. This machine supports awareness rather than isolating the rider from conditions. Wind management is purposeful. The fairing and screen shape airflow upward, protecting the chest without creating turbulence that drains warmth. Heated gear integration feels intentional, backed by electrical capacity designed for distance riding. Riders who cross states in cold weather understand how important consistent warmth becomes once miles stack up. Suspension behavior separates this machine from pretenders. Instead of deflecting off sharp winter damage, it absorbs irregularities and stays composed. That composure preserves traction when surfaces change unexpectedly. Braking remains progressive, giving the rider confidence to modulate pressure without drama when cold tires shorten margins. This design also respects experience. Maintenance access remains logical, and reliability has been proven across countless long-distance rides. Nothing about this bike demands constant attention. It simply performs mile after mile in conditions that expose weak designs quickly. Produces 136 horsepower from a 1254 cubic centimeter engine. Delivers 105 pound-feet torque uses. Braking weighs 549 pounds wet, 33. At a certain point, the battle isn't traction, it's fatigue. The right machine saves your energy like it's fuel. Number 2. Honda Goldwing. Cold weather exposes the difference between surviving a ride and arriving ready to ride again tomorrow. This entry earns its position because it treats winter as an endurance problem, not an obstacle course. While lighter machines fight wind and temperature, this one settles into them, turning harsh conditions into something manageable over long distances. Riders who have crossed states in bad weather understand the value of that approach. The Goldwing carries significant mass, and in winter, that mass becomes an asset. Crosswinds lose leverage. Grooved pavement stops tugging at the bars. The bike tracks straight and steady, reducing the constant micro-corrections that drain focus and energy. When daylight fades early and traffic grows tense, that stability keeps the rider mentally fresh instead of worn thin. Comfort is not an afterthought here. Wind protection surrounds the rider in a controlled pocket, limiting direct exposure without creating chaotic turbulence. Heat retention improves naturally, making layered gear and heated accessories more effective. The seating position supports the lower back and hips during long stretches, which matters more as joints stiffen in cold air. Riders who value longevity recognize that fatigue management is a safety feature. Power delivery remains smooth and predictable. Throttle response avoids sharp edges, allowing controlled acceleration even when traction feels muted. Braking stays composed, with progressive feel that inspires confidence when stopping distances grow. Suspension tuning favors composure over sharp response, absorbing winter-damaged pavement instead of transmitting it directly to the rider's body. Reliability plays a central role. This platform has earned a reputation for covering extreme mileage with minimal drama. Cold starts remain consistent. Maintenance intervals respect riders who plan long trips rather than short sprints. Nothing here feels rushed or experimental, which appeals to riders who trust proven systems over trends. Winter riding is rarely about excitement. It is about arriving calm, warm, and capable of riding again the next day. This machine delivers that experience consistently, even if it sacrifices agility for assurance. Produces about 125 horsepower from an 133 cubic centimeter engine, delivers roughly 125 pound-feet of torque, uses a combined anti-lock braking system, runs front and rear suspension tuned for long-distance stability, weighs approximately 833 pounds wet, carries a seat height near 30.1 inches, and starts around $25,600. One final machine remains. And it's not about being the toughest or the flashiest. It's about being the easiest to trust when the road looks sketchy. Number 1. Triumph Tiger 900. Winter has a way of settling arguments that riders debate for years in warmer months. When pavement turns gray, traction becomes uncertain, and fatigue sets in early. The road stops caring about brand loyalty or tradition. What matters is balance, leverage, and how calmly a motorcycle responds when conditions refuse to cooperate. This entry rises to the top because it aligns with that reality better than anything else on the list. The Tiger feels purposeful the moment it rolls away. Weight is centralized, not hung wide or high, which keeps the chassis calm when surfaces change without warning. Steering remains light but deliberate, allowing precise inputs without feeling nervous. That balance reduces the constant corrections that drain focus during long winter rides. Riders stay relaxed instead of braced, which preserves judgment when cold dulls reaction time. Suspension behavior defines its character. Instead of transmitting every crack and frost heave through the bars, the bike absorbs irregularities and maintains composure. That stability encourages smooth throttle and braking, even when tires struggle to generate heat. Power delivery remains linear, offering usable torque without sudden surges that can break traction. Gloves may reduce feel, but the machine responds predictably. Wind management strikes an important balance. Air is shaped upward and outward, reducing pressure on the chest while avoiding turbulent pockets that steal warmth. The cockpit keeps the rider engaged with conditions without exposing them unnecessarily. Heated gear integrates cleanly, supported by electrical capacity intended for real distance riding rather than short commutes. Adaptability seals its position here. The frame accepts guards, luggage, and protection without upsetting balance. Weight additions remain controlled, not top-heavy. Maintenance access respects riders who still service their own machines. Cold starts are consistent, and reliability has proven steady across varied climates. Nothing about this design feels fragile or overstressed. Winter riding demands honesty from a motorcycle. This one delivers it quietly, mile after mile. It does not isolate the rider from reality, nor does it amplify mistakes. It works with experience rather than against it, which is why seasoned riders often recognize its strengths only after riding through the hardest months. Produces about 94 horsepower from an 888 cubic centimeter engine, delivers roughly 65 pound-feet of torque, uses an advanced anti-lock braking system, runs long travel adjustable suspension front and rear, weighs approximately 487 pounds wet, carries a seat height near 31.9 inches, and starts around $14,495. This is the point where winter stops being an endurance test and starts feeling manageable again. Winter has a way of separating myths from machines. When roads crack, grip fades, and pride meets physics, the right motorcycle stops being a luxury and becomes a decision that keeps riders moving. Designs that respect balance, leverage, and control quietly outlast trends. Ride long enough, and the lesson becomes clear. Winter doesn't reward toughness, it rewards understanding. Choose accordingly, and cold months stop ending the season and start extending it for seasoned riders who still value freedom and control. Winter separates myths from machines. When grip fades, the right bike isn't a luxury, it's what keeps you riding. If this helped, hit like and subscribe for more rider-first breakdowns, and comment. What bike surprised you in winter, and what bike didn't belong out there?